Is that a breakup?
I think we have a situation right here.
On the Feeling Station.
Hello.
Hey, what's happening?
Hey, Tanai, how are you?
Not too bad. Second time lucky here. I was beginning to think you got cold feet. Huh? What's that about?
Maybe a little bit. Sorry, I was just putting on my headphones because I just walked into the house, literally.
Okay, you will need those because your hands will get tired. This is going to be a juicy one. Right? Right?
Yes, very juicy.
Okay, before we go too far, I need to tell you we are recording an episode of The Feeling Station, so please do your best not to say your name, okay?
I'll try.
If you do accidentally say your name, I will do my best to bleep it out in post-production, so you should be okay.
Okay.
Now, for those listening to this podcast for the first time, it touches on breakup stories that people would like to talk about with the view to give you, the listener, a lesson that you can learn from my guest's experience. Now, before we go too far, I need to give you your name. And today we've gone over to Egypt. So I'm giving you an Egyptian name. How do you feel about that?
I like it.
You like it? Okay. Right. Your name is Latifah, right? Which is Lateefah. Latifah. And that means a pleasant and kind person of tender and good character.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Now how accurate a representation is that of you as a person?
I think it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, I mean, as if anybody would say it's not accurate, huh?
It's pretty accurate.
Okay, cool. Now, this is the fun part for me. You need to think of a name that you're going to give the guy you're going to talk about. What name have you chosen to give him?
I like the Egyptian theme, so let's go with Mohammed, because I think that's...
Mohammed. Nice.
Yeah, I might know a few Mohammeds from Egypt.
Oh,
so
yeah?
I think,
Okay,
yeah,
so we got Mohammed and Latifah.
Yes.
Cool. So, what do you want people to learn from the story you're going to tell today?
I want people to learn that life will keep sending you experiences designed to get your attention until you learn the lesson.
That's a bit tough, isn't it? Because, I mean, for some people, this lesson is going to be hard to learn. And life will just keep dishing until you finally get the message.
Listen, even after it happened,
Wow.
Even after it happened, I literally still experienced something similar. But I think the lesson for me is more just trust the process within yourself. If you're on a journey, if you're on a growth spurt, as it may be, trust the process and pay attention to the things that you don't usually pay attention to. Okay,
cool beans. So let's get straight into it. How did you and Mohammed meet?
So I recently moved in December, and I had moved into a bigger space, and I was looking to probably get a housemate. Just to fend off the loneliness and help pay the bills, simple things like that. So I mentioned it to a friend of mine who is acquainted with Mohammed. And this friend, I'll try not to make life difficult and, give him a name. But he essentially was like, oh, cool. Like, that sounds really dope. Let's get into it. I'm really happy for you in whatever experience you're having. So essentially, a few weeks later, my friend calls me and says, Mohammed's moving to so I'll have that spare room. Now I've said where I live.
Don't worry, I'll sort that out. Okay, yeah, perfect. I'll bleep it out.
Okay, perfect. So Mohammed's moving. He's going to be commuting for work. He just needs somewhere to stay Monday to Friday. And someone's let him down last minute. So I was a little bit tentative because I was like, oh, come on, there's Airbnb, there's a lot out there. Yeah. But okay, being Latifah and being the kind-hearted person that I am, I decided that, it made sense. So we we got in contact, and he was like, "Oh, awesome! Like I'm really looking forward to coming and staying with you. And this is the situation. I'm going to be there 3-4 nights a week, etc., etc." So that was all settled, and he was a bit flirty, and I was like, "Okay."
Was he a bit flirty on the intro texts, or this is after he's moved in?
This was on the intro text.
Okay.
So
Okay.
say it's a Friday, like the introduction, the conversation happens on a Friday. He's super, super flirty when we have this sort of conference call with my friend. And I thought, maybe he's just a flirty person. I am flirty. It's okay. It's allowed. What I didn't realize at that point was that was a huge red flag.
Really?
You can tell I'm a listener, hey?
Yeah, yes.
That was a huge red flag. And I just looked at it as being, this is someone's nature. I can't judge them. And that's not going to affect me because we weren't going to see much of each other as I thought because I worked nights at the time. So fast forward to Sunday. He gives me a phone call, and I'm post nights, and I'm kind of like tired, but I'm still wide awake.
Yeah.
And we end up having this really in-depth conversation, little getting to know you conversation that lasts for 3 hours. I'm ashamed to even say it out loud. It was.
You guys had a lot to talk about, didn't you?
We had a lot to talk about. He was very interesting. He seemed very forthcoming about his experiences. He mentioned that he'd been married previously. He had a daughter who was preteen, and it seemed like an interesting situation. But at the same time, his conversation it wasn't loaded. It just seemed to flow, and I don't know. I took the bait. I took the bait on the premise at that point. I was just thinking, I'm being friendly towards someone who's going to be living with me. I'm not going to see them much. It's not going to matter. Like, don't worry too much about it.
So when you eventually did go to bed after you had spoken to him for 3 hours, did you manage to get him off your mind immediately, or you kind of lay there thinking about the conversation and thinking about him too before you actually slept?
I got off the phone because he had become a little bit too familiar, if that's the way to put it.
Oh, okay.
In a sense of like, just being a guy. So that's another red flag.
Right.
Saying, someone's being sexually like overt towards you, and you brush it off.
And all of this is on the first conversation over the phone.
This is the first conversation.
Wow, this is mad. Okay, well, did you manage to shake him off, or he kind of floated on your mind before you drifted to sleep?
I didn't think anything of it. I hadn't seen him. I think looks are important.
Okay.
So I hadn't really given it much thought. But I thought, oh, cool, he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
So come Monday, he shows up after work, and he's got his, overnight bag. Seemed like a little sleepover. But he shows up, and
what was your first impression?
I was like, "Ooh, he's kind of cute." Not my type, but cute.
All right. Okay.
He was attractive. He's an attractive man and very friendly. So at that point, I was like panicking a little bit because I thought, what's my mother going to think? This strange man is moving into my house. Yeah. And my mom was like, men from Egypt.
Okay.
Just be careful. Because when I eventually told her, she was like, no, just be careful of men from Egypt.
Okay.
Be careful of him making you a wife there.
That wouldn't be such a bad thing because Egyptians have loads of queens, doesn't it? So you'd be Queen Latifah. Hey,
wow!
Do you like how I dropped that in there?
Love it.
So honestly, cheesy, my goodness, I can't believe that.
And you know what? It's funny because he had this way of treating me like a queen in a way that I wasn't anticipating, and I couldn't now decide whether this was someone who was just flirty or I was reading too much into it. Okay. Like you said, did I lay there thinking about him? I didn't. But I started building castles in the sky. Like
Mhm.
it was so easy.
Yeah.
So the week that he moved in, I was off. So I was able to sort of like settle him in and just sort of do a bit of housekeeping, make sure that he was okay and whatnot.
Mhm.
And he started making me dinner all the time.
He started making you dinner all the time.
All the time, like constantly making
Wow.
me meals. And
Was his food any good?
very good, really
Really?
good cook.
Hmm.
It was it was interesting. I just thought he was being friendly, and I didn't think much into it. But I thought he was cute. And by the time I was sort of entertaining a lot of thoughts at the back of my mind,
Mhm.
there were loads of things that I didn't own up to until much later on into the whole story.
Really?
So we're talking, and the 3 hour conversation had sort of given me a bit of background about him. And one night we're having a glass of wine after dinner, like,
Mhm.
chewing the fat.
Mhm.
And he mentioned my friend's name, a girlfriend who lived locally.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, you know my friend, like, that's interesting." And then everything started clicking. Like the moment he mentioned my friend's name, and then he's like, "Yeah, that she was friends with the girl that I married." And I'm like, "Ooh, I know about this guy. I know
Oh.
everything." Women talk.
Yes. 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 Yes.
So I knew a lot about him. I knew a lot about his old relationship, not from a, insidious place. It was just more so when he was going through the separation with his ex.
Yeah.
My friend sort of fed back and stopped talking to his ex because, well, I think at one point she'd asked him to follow him around.
Really?
And she was like, "No, like, that's crazy.
Why?
I'm not doing that and I don't want to know you anymore."
Yeah. No. No. That's really strange.
It was really strange. But you know what? It made sense later on.
Okay. Okay.
It made sense later on. I could empathize.
Mhm.
So yeah, we got talking about that. He revealed a little bit more about that relationship and stuff. That you're just like, "Oh, well, I didn't know that, but thanks."
Yeah. Yeah.
So at this point, I was like in like panic overdrive. My anxiety was like heightened. I
Yeah.
was wondering if I placed myself in a compromising situation, and I called everybody and anybody who would listen to me in terms of my support group and my friend circle, my family, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And they're like, "But this person's just there as a lodger. Like, why are you fronting? Like,
Yeah.
relax.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
why are you creating like a problem where there's no problem?"
Yeah. Just chill.
Yeah, so that was like a part of the lesson that probably is the bit that a lot of us miss.
Mhm.
Like not paying attention to your triggers, not paying attention to like the way you're behaving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because this isn't a story about how Muhammad broke my heart. No,
Mhm.
it's not.
Okay.
This is a story about how we get into a space where we can easily break our own hearts without even
Wow.
trying.
About breaking your own heart.
Yeah.
That's mad. It's the first time I've come across something like this. In all the previous episodes, right? It's somebody who's done the breaking of somebody's heart, but in this instance, you're breaking your own heart.
Your own heart.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna put that down as a lesson. Then, where you said pay attention to yourself and pay attention to your triggers.
Yeah, pay attention to your behavior.
Yeah.
Like work through your issues if you have to, but don't don't get too entangled. I know you hate the word,
I
but
absolutely hate that word, and have a
Just had to
feeling,
bring it in there.
and have a feeling somebody else is gonna drop in there just because they now know that it irks me. I don't like that word. Okay, right. So pay attention to your own triggers. Right, cool. Let's go.
Yeah, like pay attention to that. So it's eventually, the pandemic sort of took hold,
Mm-hmm.
and because he didn't have to be working in the town that I live in, he went back home.
Okay.
which was great for me because at this point I was heightened. I had started exuding behaviors that I'm very ashamed to even admit.
Okay, I want to know what some of those are. What some of those behaviors?
Some of those behaviors were just giving too much room for somebody who's not saying anything concrete. Who's not saying anything in particular. They're telling you you're pretty. They're being attentive to your needs. They're being everything but the word, like I was like lapping it all up.
Okay.
I was enjoying the attention and the affection. I was enjoying the multiple calls. Like we were just living together, but he would call me multiple times a day. If I was at work, like, he would text all the time. It was becoming a little bit crossing the boundaries of, okay, we're just sharing a space.
I mean, but what's the problem with that though?
The problem with that is he wasn't saying anything.
Okay.
He literally was not saying anything in particular that should have led me to believe that there was anything forming between us, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It will make sense.
Okay.
It will make sense. So eventually, at this point, I'm now curious. I'm now trying to figure out about this person. And, the ex-wife's friend, who's also my friend, was like, yeah, he's got a child with his ex-wife. And I'm like, didn't mention a child. Like, no, he does have a child. And I'm like, oh, okay, so now that's an extra child. But then how do you even approach someone about something that's none of your business? They told you a story.
It sort of could have been your business because remember one of the things that you mentioned right at the beginning was that when you guys were speaking over the phone, he became very familiar. He told you about, that he was divorced. He told you that he had a child. So you knew there was a child in the picture somewhere.
I knew about one child.
Oh, there was another child.
There was another child.
Oh.
Another child who was barely 5, I think.
5 years.
Barely 5. Barely.
Okay.
If at all.
Okay.
And I'm not in the habit of confronting people about their secrets. It's not in my nature. If I know something about you and you don't want to talk about it, good for you. Like,
you don't probe.
Keep it moving. I don't probe, and I think I didn't have reason to probe because at this point it was just this over familiarity that had placed me in a space of being involved with someone when I wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I'd formed an intimacy that didn't necessarily
exist. Oh dear.
Yeah.
Okay.
It existed.
And this is very interesting. Right. Yeah. Right. Go on.
So at this point, he goes back home, and I'm kind of like I'm a little bit miffed about the second child because I don't have any children, and this person's like, they're kind of moving to you, so you're kind of like, okay, well, if you have all these babies, why aren't you talking about them? You know. But I thought, what? Stay on assignment in terms of your life, your growth, your processes. Like, stop overthinking things that don't matter, He kept calling me the whole time that this whole lockdown occurred. Constantly calling me, constantly texting me, constantly. And it just didn't make any sense. Because there wasn't anything of substance that he was saying to me. But obviously, here you are creating a connection that you have no intention of pursuing, or you don't know what you want to do with.
Yeah.
My friend warned me and was like, that's just who Mohammed is. Like, honestly speaking, he's just a friendly person, but at the same time, he can cross boundaries very easily. Just be careful. So I'm like, no, I want to give Mohammed the benefit of doubt. We vibe. We can talk for hours. He's been so respectful, and we've been sharing space. He's not at all ever knocked on my bedroom door and tried to do anything more than, he's been super respectful. So what do you mean, Mohammed? This, like
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
already looking at my friend. I'm like, yo, you must have had a thing for Mohammed. You just don't want us to
Oh
be
yeah,
happy.
oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, already from the sound of things, that's a red flag that you missed. In terms of how
Oh
deep
yeah.
you were into this whole thing, and someone is trying to
Oh
warn you, and
yeah.
you're like, nah, nah, nah.
Yeah, and I was also in denial because anytime anyone would say you are now having feelings, I would be like, well, no, I'm not there. It's not where I am.
So
I'm
Muhammad would actually tell you that you're having feelings.
not Mohammed.
Okay, more
Any
Muhammad's
of my
friend.
friends
Okay,
or any of my friends, any of
yeah,
my people, and the friend that introduced us at some point called me and was like, "Oh, how's it going with you and Mohammed?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, it's all good." And he was like, "Oh yeah, I haven't heard from him in a while. I think he's got a girlfriend." So I thought that was like a little bit of a warning sign, but I didn't know. He said, "I
mm,
think," so I was like, "Well, he thinks. He doesn't know."
wow, okay.
So the funny thing about Mohammed's incessant calls and texts, there would be periods where he wouldn't call me. Like
Mm-hmm.
this would happen between certain hours on the weekend. Um, certain, it was just bizarre. He would call me only when he was outdoors, when he was taking a walk, when he'd gone to the shop. When, it just didn't add up because I was like, so does he live with someone? Like, what's the story? I'm now a curious cat. Like, I really want to know,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm like. I managed to gather myself in this whole process. So a few weeks down the line, I managed to gather myself. I managed to sort of like diminish the amount of contact we're having. And that's a lesson as well. Like you can control the amount of contact you have with someone.
Yeah,
Things don't just happen to you.
yeah,
You can actually dictate that, okay, I'm going to be able to talk to this person for such and such a time, but I'm not going to answer every single one of their 4 or 5 phone calls a day.
yeah.
There are multiple texts all through the day, or what. Just create boundaries for yourself. And I decided to do that, which was great because in the past I'd always failed.
So did
Always failed to create boundaries. Yeah.
so did you start doing this because you noticed a sudden trend that this guy only calls me when he's outdoors and he's unavailable at specific times at the weekend?
It was just accumulation of everything. I was still in denial about how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I was getting in too deep, but I was still in the mindset that this was just friendly. And of course, I think he's cute, but it's nothing. And, like it just didn't make, I had not made any sort of root cause analysis, like sat down and
Yeah,
looked at my situation and tried to figure out what was going on.
yeah.
I just decided to engage a tactic that I was aware of, but I
Okay,
never used very well.
right. Gotcha.
So the call stopped, and it was like great. I was like, whew, fine, like this is fab. Like no more talking, no more all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, he sort of like limited it to like once a week, and then sort of dwindled down. And then we had a conversation where he called me after maybe about 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously I'd missed him. I hadn't spoken to him in a while. He was someone I constantly engaged with. So I'm having this conversation with him, and we're just chatting, chewing the fat, and it then dawned on me. I was like, I have a crush on this guy, but I didn't say it then.
Yeah.
I didn't say it then. We just sort of had a bit of a chit chat. And the next week, when we spoke again, I was like, okay, I think I just need to be clear about where I'm at. But a few things happened during this time.
Mm-hmm.
Because being the curious cat that I am, being someone who has a prayer life, I called my best friend and I said to her, I really don't know how I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. Like, why am I going into this, it's like cyclical sort of behavior with men in general, like getting caught up
Mm-hmm.
when there's no when there's no substance.
Mm.
So we like prayed about it. She she lives far away, but we got on the phone. We had a little prayer session. And I'd been having really weird dreams. So before my friend had, this is so weird. Before my friend had told me about the second child, I dreamt he had a pregnant girlfriend, which is
Oh,
bizarre. But I just thought, you know what? That's just crazy. Like, that's just my mind going into overdrive.
yeah.
And after me and my friend had prayed, I had another dream where I was with this man and we were together, but there was a huge air of like unhappiness within myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, that's crazy. Why would I even dream about being with this person? Like, I don't even have any feelings for this person. Like, it's crazy. So I then just thought, you know what? There's no harm in Googling someone. And I think I had when he initially moved in.
Oh, no, you didn't.
I did. So I had Googled him, so his full name, just before he moved in, just to
Yeah.
make sure that, okay, cool, like, he does definitely live there and he works here and all of this. That was my little DBS. Google DBS. But, you know, I went on Facebook and I just typed in his last name. And it's funny because the day before we'd been having a conversation and he'd been telling me about his tattoos, which I hadn't seen. So he said, oh, I have like, I have a tiger on my right shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a tiger on my right shoulder. I have this and this over here, and all sorts of other tattoos. And yeah, they've been flirting, obviously. So, you know. So when I'm on Facebook, like I thought, let me just put in his last name, and someone comes up without the last name. But when I clicked on their profile, this person had the last name in brackets, like as a small little bit. So I think it's usually married women or people who've changed names who do that, so that people who know them can still find them.
Okay.
And in the corner of this picture, it could have been a cousin, it could have been a sister, it could have been a child. Who knows?
Yeah.
But in the corner of this picture is a picture of, like, the picture of a girl.
Yeah.
And we have like a ton of common friends. Turns out we went to the same boarding school, not at the same time. So I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And the arm that sort of showed, you know, because it's a circular thing on Facebook when it's someone's profile picture.
Yeah.
And I could see an arm with a tiger. And
Oh.
I was like, hold on, wait a minute. Doesn't make any sense. But anyway, I'm like, okay, you know, curiosity, let's just have a browse, you know, the dark hole of Facebook.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone's been there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, we all have.
And I'm clicking through pictures and I see pictures of them together. They look like engagement pictures. And I'm like, but no, this person is in Egypt. This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And then I keep clicking through and I see a wedding picture. My heart sank. My heart sank. Like I was, you know, when you just sort of like, you're sitting there.
And tell me something, how recent were these pictures?
So these pictures were from 2017.
Okay.
So it wasn't the previous ex-wife. This is another wife altogether.
No way. Oh my goodness. You know, that was going to be my question. That's the question I was waiting to ask. That, okay, maybe it's the ex-wife, so it doesn't matter. It's 3 years ago. It's gone. It's done and dusted. But this is a fresh one.
This was 3 years ago with the fresh one, because the other ex-wife is from like 5-6 years ago. So I'm just like, whoa, this is crazy. I take screenshots, I send them to all my girlfriends, and I'm like, you won't believe it.
Oh,
I'm very upset at this point, and I'm like.
But the only person to be upset with right now is you, right?
Oh yes,
because you got yourself into this whole mess. You had a fantasy and you're in love with this guy in your own head. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Like the only person I could be upset with was myself.
Oh wow. Okay.
I literally was sitting there and I'm thinking, I can't believe this. So anyway, I pick up a few common friends, and it turns out two of them are very good friends of mine. And I'm like, oh, so do you know so and so from Egypt? We went to the same school in Egypt, and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, like yeah, she's a cool chick, you know. She was very happy when she got married. She got married a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
This is like one of my girlfriends who I'm super, super close to, and I tell her the story, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, it's so sad." You know, she was so pleased when she got married, and you know, I think they've got a child. And I'm like, "What do you mean they've got a child?" So I go back, I go
Oh
back onto
my God.
Facebook, and on her, like, I think there's a background picture just behind your profile picture.
Yeah.
She's there with a baby, like a little boy who looks exactly like him, and I'm like,
Yeah. Now there's no denying that, then, is there? Oh,
I was
jeez.
so, you know, I was so taken aback. I didn't even know what to say to myself. But at this point, I'm frustrated. I think
Yeah.
I'm frustrated because I had a conversation with him prior to this
Mm-hmm.
where I sort of admitted that, you know, I think us living in the same space was detrimental for me because I think that close proximity and that intimacy has just made it very hard for me to keep my feelings in check.
Oh, so you actually admitted to him that you caught
Oh
feelings.
yeah, like I
And
told him this.
wow.
I think just after like the last couple of conversations when we started talking again after you know the boundary setting etc. I had this conversation with him and I was like, you know, I don't know, I feel like I have a bit of a crush on you. That's what I called it, a crush, because
Mm,
for me it didn't have substance. It didn't
yeah,
make sense
yeah.
why I was feeling the way I was feeling, and I was getting caught up. And he was like, no, you know, you probably miss me, like I miss you too. Listen,
Wow.
he's like, I miss you too.
This
I'm working
guy,
tomorrow.
this
Wait
guy,
for
right?
it.
Uh-huh.
Wait for it. He goes, I miss you too. I'm gonna pull through tomorrow. I'll come see you. He came over the next day and he made lunch. He made
Uh-huh.
lunch. He was very cordial, very sweet. We had a very nice sort of afternoon. So at this point, like they'd been an admitting of feelings on both sides to a degree.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, and I find out all this crazy stuff after. Yeah.
So did he openly admit that he felt the same at some point? Because
He
from the sound of things right now, it sounds like you made it known to him by saying that you had a crush. And he just said, "Oh, maybe you just miss me. I'll fix that. I'll come and see you." And then you stop missing me. It doesn't sound like he admitted the same.
exactly.
So,
So he didn't say anything in concrete,
mm,
but his conversation and his behavior towards me was contradictive. I don't know if that makes sense.
he's a man who's very cautious about what he says. Yeah,
Exactly.
possibly because he's learned from the past that saying certain things could lead to things that he can't actually deal with.
Exactly.
Okay,
But I mean, there
so
was
but
no need. Mhm.
so by him not saying anything, you couldn't come back and get mad at him because he never said it.
This is the thing. This is the thing.
Hmm.
But you know, I did sort of walk myself up the garden path. He just had to open the gate. So after I find out all of this stuff, and I'm like, I'm upset because I'm like, that's crazy. I think I was more upset for her,
Mm-hmm.
um, because you know she's young and she's thinking, here I have this perfect husband, and you know he's busy making her then lunch and telling her how pretty she is and making her tea for lunch.
Did he ever try and get physical with you? Did he ever try kiss you? Did he ever try any of that stuff?
No,
No, not at all.
not at all, but not in an overt manner. He would say things.
Okay,
He would say things, and I would laugh it off.
so he would hint,
He would hint.
but then because you weren't giving him that go ahead, he wouldn't engage.
Yeah,
So given the chance, you would have.
given the chance.
So you did well in paying attention to your triggers then, because you held back.
Oh yeah, this is a great story, and the fact that sometimes you just have to, like, a lesson will still keep presenting itself.
Yeah.
But it's like there's ways to nip it in the bud. Like obviously, there were other aspects of the lesson that I'm still, in process with, and I still had to process from that experience. But yeah. So just to wrap up, because I just wanted to hit the main points of the story. I'm wondering at this point, do I confront him? Excuse me. I'm wondering, do I confront him? Do I ask him about it? And I thought, you know what? No, let me ask this person because he must get away with this a lot.
Okay.
So I call him and I'm like, hey, Mohammed, hey, Ma, how are you? And he's like, oh, I'm good. I was like, oh, can I talk to you for a little bit? Are you busy? And he's like, yeah, I'm at work, but, we can talk. I'm like, no, you're at work. I'll talk to you later. And he's like, no, let's talk. Like, I've always got time for you. See, the reasons why I was,
yeah.
He's
avoiding the home conversation because the missus is at home.
No, he's saying, like, let's have a conversation. No, she wasn't. She's not even here. She's in Egypt.
Okay, cool.
So at this point, I'm like, Mohammed, are you married? And he's like,
As if he didn't hear. I know that.
And I'm like, Mohammed, are you married? Well, you know about my marriage to my ex, your friend's your friend's friend. And I'm like, yeah. But are you married? Yeah, I got married again, but that didn't work out.
But are you married?
So he said I got married again, but that didn't work out. And obviously being someone I had feelings for, the first thing I did at that moment was I thought, oh, poor darling. Like my heart just went out to him and I was like, oh no. So I'm like, why didn't you tell me? So at this point, I'm putting on my little sweet voice. I'm ready to make up. I'm ready to put everything under the bridge.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go back to, all these, amazing experiences of just talking to someone who had a lot of positive things to say.
Yeah.
And he says, well, because it's my business.
Oh.
Did you catch that?
Really?
Sorry, I laugh and talk at the same time.
Really?
He says to me, because it's my business.
Really?
I was shocked. I was so taken aback. I didn't even know what to say. And I just said, oh, okay, cool. No worries. I'm going to go to bed. And he's like, cool. I'll call you later. We got off the phone.
Wow. Talk about being left breathless, huh?
And I at this point, I'm sitting there like, did that just happen?
Yeah.
I'm sitting there thinking, did that just happen? Because like I mentioned earlier, I don't probe. And I don't probe because I don't have the capacity to deal with people's reactiveness.
Yeah.
Not responsiveness, reactiveness to probing. If someone shares something with me, it's because... So I'm taken aback because I'm not used to that kind of response from anybody. I'm a bigger sister. I, look after other people at work. I tend to command quite a lot of respect in whatever, space I'm moving around, be it in a relationship. I've not had anyone talk to me like that ever.
Yeah.
So that was so breathtaking. I was taken aback. I couldn't understand why anyone would speak to me like that. But at this point, I'd asserted the fact that, he was clearly in a marriage. I'd figured out that there must have been some sort of upset
Mm-hmm.
in respect to just me asking the situation that he hadn't chosen to share.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so he sort of came round and needed to drop off my keys. And at this point, he was refusing to give me back my keys to my house.
He was refusing to give you keys to your house.
He was just making a situation out of it. So if I said to him, I'm free on Monday, he'd be like, oh, sorry, I was stuck at work. If I said to him, okay, post them, or if I said to them, like, listen, I'll come to where you live, I will pick up the keys.
Yeah.
He was full of stories. Eventually, I had to contact a friend that initially got us in touch and say, listen, this is the situation. Can I get my keys back?
Yeah.
And it was interesting. It was an interesting experience.
That is crazy. So did you guys still talk, or that was it?
So after all of that, he bought the keys. It was quite cordial. I sort of, kept my distance. And I respond when he contacts me.
Mm-hmm.
He calls on occasion. He texts. And I don't believe in our separateness, more so our togetherness as a human race. So for me, not talking to him would be giving him power.
Oh, okay.
So I say hello. I'm very polite. I no longer am in in love, in crush. I'm no longer in a space where I'm.
You've since moved on with yourself.
I've since moved on with myself, but I learned a lot from the experience because it just had me open up my eyes to the fact that a lot of the times when we turn around and we say other people broke our hearts, or we got involved with the wrong person, or we didn't see the red flags, or what have you, it's because we allowed ourselves to just not pay attention to our gut feeling. I think everyone sort of has an internal compass.
Yeah.
And I didn't pay attention to that in so many ways. And for example, from the very beginning, I didn't want to live with someone of the opposite sex. I think that can be very difficult if you're not in a familial or established platonic relationship.
Yeah.
It's very difficult just from one or the other will get into a space. I believe that happens quite more often than we admit.
Yeah, true.
Some people have more self-control than others. Furthermore to that, I learned not to overly prescribe to someone telling me how amazing I am, and how like that whole thing of someone putting in work and time to court my friendship or my familiarity in whatever respect. It can be such a downward spiral because you start to have expectations, and you start to pretty much, I'm sure this is the first breakup story that didn't actually have a relationship.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you put it like that, I was just thinking about the intro where I say it's a breakup story. I mean, it's a podcast about breakups, but this one doesn't actually. Well, it kind of does have a breakup because you had to break your emotion and feeling for this guy. All right, so there is an element of that, except that it's not in the context of a full-on relationship.
Yeah.
So it's completely different, and thank you for bringing it in this light. It is very unique.
It is, yeah.
Wow. So just as I'm wrapping this up, I'll just touch on the lessons that Queen Latifah here shared with us. Muhammad came over to live with her. She intended intentionally to live with someone of the same sex, but because it came as a recommendation from a friend, she kind of opened up to the idea and then sort of discovered down the line that she was not paying any attention to her own triggers. Her triggers, getting her to mellow to this guy, catching feelings, and sort of having a fantasy relationship in her own mind, until the point when she realized it was important to take control of the contact you have with someone. And this is something that that I've picked up on the episodes we've had. We all have the power within ourselves to control how we interact with someone, but sometimes that gets masked by how we feel about an individual. So take control over yourself, take control over how somebody speaks to you. And just as we've learned from this experience, Mo was really good with his words, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because he was so good with his words, take the words that a man gives you with a pinch of salt, especially when they're not telling you anything concrete.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been listening to another episode of The Phoenix Station. Queen Latifah, thank you very much for giving us a very unique perspective on a breakup with yourself. This will go down as one of my most intriguing episodes. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And for those who've been joining us on this session, I hope that I catch you on next week's episode. Have fun and have a super good weekend. Peace.
Tell me what you're feeling.
Sati zondaro rwaini andichake zaini.
Tell me what you're feeling. Now that it's over.
Sati zondaro rwaini andichake zaini.
Let me talk about my feelings. Let me talk about my feelings, yeah.
Rudo imoto runoto kuchidziro amai.
Kuchidziro amai. Love is a fire.
Rudo imoto runoto kuchidziro amai.